If you've struggled with stress, balance, or burnout, and simply feel discouraged or even defeated, and if you're ready to move from force to flow and enjoy ultimate Zen success in your career, health, or relationships, then the Zen Success Show is for you. Your host, Carissa Sims, is an entrepreneur, corporate consultant, best-selling author, meditation teacher, and healer who has found her own Zen success. Here's your host, Carissa Sims.
Welcome to this week's episode of Zen Success. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Randall Libero. Hi, Randall.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
Happy that you're here today. Let me share a little bit more about Randall. Randall Libero's media career began as a cameraman, editor, and producer of TV pilots, documentaries, TV shows, and commercials in Los Angeles in the 1980s. Wow, I bet you have some stories there.
Yeah, that was a wild time. Actually, I ended up in Burbank in 1976. Fall of 76 is when I moved to LA.
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
Yeah.
During the
hmm
1990s, he was a news writer and media archivist for the International Broadcasting Bureau at the U.S. State Department in Washington, D.C. So he has had so much experience with conscious media. In the early stage of online media content, 2000 to 2010, Randall designed media strategies and produced original content for such luminaries as, get this, I mean, these are the top, the best of the best. Dr. Joe Dispenza, Eckhart Tolle, Dr. John Demartini, I've had him on my show, the Omega
Yeah.
Institute, and many other celebrities, visionaries, and notable business influencers. And it's just shows working with these people, you were in alignment. Your consciousness was in alignment in promoting them and helping them. He
Yeah.
innovative ways of online production, distribution, technical design, and audience interaction, and created thematic branded channels, entire online network platforms, and live streaming video pay-per-view events. He was also executive producer for the Convergence podcast series for Evolutionary Leaders Circle. Randall has worked and collaborated with companies and organizations such as American Film Market, IFTA, Ernst Young, the U.S. Marine Corps, Unity, I go to that church, Sounds True, a huge company publishing here in Boulder. I live in Colorado. So currently, Randall is a writer and co-producer of the multi-podcast series Behind the Icon and author of the forthcoming book, Media Expanded. And didn't you just come out with a movie? Why is that not on your profile? Come on.
I That's just a little something I did. It's just, you know,
I know, but you're too humble.
I'm producing all sorts of things all the time. And, being someone who's a producer who's often behind the scenes, it's just, what's important is the audience. You get the content out there and let the audience figure out, if they like it or not or whatever. And if it does well, then I might publicly take credit for it,
Okay,
But you're
so
always
you're
guessing.
not going to talk about it
You're
right
always
now?
guessing with things.
Okay, it's just an
Um,
opportunity to
yeah,
share
I did
insight.
I've got into frequency wellness devices. I have, some in my home, and I made a video about electromagnetic frequency. And I
Mhm.
posted it on my Facebook. If you find my Facebook page, you'll see it on there. So
Okay, find out
there's all
more
sorts of little
there.
things I do, but right now I'm actually remastering one of my old videos, which is called the straw bale solution from
Okay,
years
and
ago.
what is
So
that?
it was a video about building with straw bale back in the early 1990s when we shot it in Mexico, about 6 hours south of the border in Canada and the US. And I'm actually going to be moving and building a natural built house up in Washington State. So I'm remastering this actually just, you know, just for fun. and putting it out there again. I did it with a partner. We raised $20,000 and made it. And it's just something I feel it's important for people to take a look at again, all the, revolution happening in housing right now. But one of the things that I've recently added because of what I've been working on in my life and career is that I've made a connection between media and consciousness. And a lot of people, you put those two things together and they go, what are you talking about? So, that's the kind of thing that I'm interested in now. And that's what my book is going to be about, which is how that media has changed the way we think, the way we relate, the way that we live, and even sometimes the way that we dream. Because,
And
ever
what's the
since
name of that book? Do you have a
it's
name
Media
yet?
Expanded, it's going to
Yeah,
be,
Media
and I'm
Expanded.
going to be
Okay.
later in this year, I'm going to be launching
Okay.
a stack blog and talk show, and all of that's all coming out. It's something that I've actually been kind of interested in it since I read a book in high school called Expanded Cinema by Gene Youngblood. If you can go look that book up.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that book going to photography class, in the morning. It's like 7:30 in the morning. I'm going to photography class
Mm-hmm.
reading this book. And, I have my friends around the bus and they go, hey, Randall, what are you reading? And I show it to them, this very intellectual book about cinema and all that. And they go, the heck is that? What are you doing? You know, but I was just kind of a different kind of a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was in college, I wrote a term paper because I was just reading all this on my own. I needed a subject for a term paper. So I'll write it on films and society. So I wrote that term paper when I was at college. I was 19 and a half years old. And I showed it to the professor. I got a B plus on it. And he wrote a note on it saying, you need to basically, give credit to your source material. And I said, I did. And he looked at me like he didn't realize that I could be that smart. And I said, no, that's all. He would point to passages. And I said, no, I wrote that. He said, you didn't get that out of a book? I said, no.
That's so interesting.
He couldn't believe it. He
Professors.
couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
So, because I had started reading about and studying motion picture business, ever since I was about 6 years old.
Okay.
When I was
Yeah.
a teenager, I learned about the silent era. I learned about great directors. I learned
Huh.
about cinematography. I started being a photographer myself. Started making little movies and things like that. Very
Yeah.
similar to what Steven Spielberg did. We all had little Super 8 cameras and shooting stuff and whatever,
Okay.
joking around.
Yeah.
When I got to photography class, I started getting serious about it and shooting 60 millimeter and all the other business.
Yeah.
But all throughout this, talking to my parents, because as I got understanding a little bit more about the history of movies and then, of course, television, which was only about less than 10 years old when I was growing up. Television had just come out in 1952, 53. And I was, this is like 1962, 63 in my life. And, I'm looking at King Kong on WOR TV9 and looking at that movie and thinking, how the heck did they do that? Because there's no giant ape.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
starting about special effects. And then from there, I learned about a lot of things, the history of film, how it started, and before the silent era. And I'm watching all the silent era movies. I became a fanatic for silent movies. I watched as many as I could because my grandparents would tell me, "Oh, I went to see Charlie Chaplin in the Gold Rush and was eating the shoelaces like spaghetti." And I saw, when my grandfather told that story, he like lit up. I said, well, that film really affected you. He said, yeah, I'd never really been to the movies and I saw that movie. So I started getting interested in people's reactions to movies
That's
and all
interesting.
that. And,
What
and that's
about,
where I started thinking about how it's affecting us.
yeah. So would you share how you got your start as a cameraman? Did you have to join, like, what was the process? Did you join the union or like, how did you get into it? Or did you just like Steven
No,
Spielberg it showed up
no,
on the
no,
set?
no. So this is LA in the late 1970s that I'm there, okay?
Yeah.
So
Fly by the seat of your
when
pants.
I was in college, because I had photography, I had film courses, I had TV courses, because we had half-inch videotape then. So there was a whole bunch of equipment in the Student Activity Center that was being unused. I found it one day. And I thought, well, I don't have to go and use the stuff that's in the classroom. I have this other equipment. So I had saved little comedy bits since I was writing about 12 or 13 years old. And I made this 45-minute comedy show with my college mates. And we were just joking around doing crazy stuff, filming them, like the running, jumping, and standing still Olympic competition. And, I did NUTZ Night Beat News with Just in Case, all this funny stuff.
Yeah, like Saturday Night Live, the
Yeah,
beginning.
before Saturday Night Live. So when Saturday Night Live came on television, I said to my friends that they saw my videotape, said, Randall, you're doing what they're doing. I said, yeah, I'm already doing it.
Yeah.
So I just thought, okay. So I moved. I went out to LA. I flew out there after I graduated college, and I had my demo reel. I had this TV show. So through my uncle, who had written an episode of Bonanza for NBC that made air, actually, he knew part of my extended family is the Turtletaubes. John Turtletaub, who directed National Treasure and lots of movies and things like that. And Saul Turtletaub was a producer at NBC doing Sanford and Son. So I take my tape in, I go into screening area for video because I had that's my demo reel, and they put the tape on, and Saul was talking to me because about family stuff, and he had a couple people watch it, and he heard them laughing. So after about 15 minutes, he called the engineer. He says, "All right, turn it off." So he looked at me and he said, you got talent. I mean, people are laughing at your stuff, and it's like Saturday Night Live. I said, yeah, I did it before Saturday Night Live. So in his mind, he's thinking, he's making current stuff. He did it before it was even on television. He's smart.
Innovation.
They're laughing at it.
Yeah.
So he says, write me something. And I said, write what? For who? He says, well, who do you like? And I said, well, Carol Burnett and Dick Van Dyke, who had a variety show in the summer at that time. I said, those are the people I'm watching right now. He says, write something for them. I said, you're kidding. He said, no. Okay. So I wrote a sketch for Carol Burnett. I knew, it would probably be read by the staff, but it's a staff show. They're not going to let it, somebody who's an unknown in.
Yeah.
But I wrote something for Dick Van Dyke, which is a spoof of the Lone Ranger, where he's retiring from the Old West, and he's making, Tonto tacos and burgers, flipping silver shakes, in the desert.
That's funny.
So like a fast food thing.
Yeah, that's
Dick
really
read
funny.
it, and Dick read it and he liked it. He thought it was good. So I got to I got to meet the producer, who was Alan Bly. He had produced the Smothers Brothers show. If you look that up, the producer of the Smothers Brothers, which was like the huge thing on television in the late 60s.
Okay.
So I'm sitting with him, he's editing the show. He's talking to me. So he took my tape and he didn't give it back to me for 4 months. I had to basically almost break down the door of his office to go get it back. But whatever. But I realized after that experience that, nobody knows anything in Hollywood. They're all making it up as they go. And I thought, well, what the heck? I got skills. I'm just going to start, farming myself out as a cameraman. And then also that at that time, half-inch videotape, just, there were public access, like in Encino, California, there was a public access station. So we got to borrow for free, half-inch tape, shoot things in the studio there. And I met a lot of people coming in to public access shows that I got work, and they hired me out to do stuff like that afterwards. I made a documentary with the Marine Corps, and I brought that back to the public access station. It's just this like documentary. I got Vic Isay, who played Doc, and Billy Jack to narrate it. And I got help from the Marine Corps. I'm shooting things exploding, tanks moving in the desert, like it's a real documentary with Vic's voice over it. It sounded great. So I started after I showed that to people and made a demo reel. They said, yeah, I'll hire him. He knows what he's doing, how to film off the back of a moving tank. So I got all sorts of jobs and things like that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, I made music videos. I shot stuff for singers. We shot 16 millimeter. My friend and I, we shot 35 millimeter. We made a fashion video for Jake LaMotta's daughter. She was a dancer. Just stuff like that. And we're just, that's what you do. You're a freelancer, and you shoot at anything, and you make money, and then you go out and I knew all sorts of crazy people in Hollywood. And,
I believe
when
it.
you're in the business, but I got time, and I met these guys who were writers from Freddie Prinz's show, which is called Chico and the Man. And they gave me a script. I went in there one day, I got a call back from NBC, and they said, Randall, what are you doing? I said, well, come in and meet these guys. So I went back in there a few months later, And I meet these two guys and they hand me some blue pages and they're going, can you make this funnier? So this is showbiz, okay? So I'm looking at it and I go, well, I said, so what's this episode? So describe to me what's happening. And then where are you guys going 10 episodes from now, like next season? Where are the characters and the relationship going?
Yeah.
And they say, well, Freddie, this is going to happen to Freddie and this is going to happen to Jack. And I said, well, this scene makes no sense because if that's where you're going, then you need to flip. Freddie says this and Jack says this. You need to flip it around. So they took what I did and they got back to the executive producer. They were nice guys. They were like 2 years older than me.
Uh-huh.
And they're working on the show. So they're looking for young writers. And then when I went back before, like 2 weeks before, I went to go and meet the executive producer and the writing staff, Freddie Prinze blew his brains out. Killed himself.
Yeah.
So there went that job. So this is,
and your connection.
Yeah. And I figured, this is crazy. What am I doing? And I thought for a while that, I should just leave. Like, you got to deal with this stuff. But that's the business.
Yeah.
That's a business. That's what it's like.
I want to know about your transition. I want to know about your transition.
After 12 years of doing all that.
Yeah. And then like, what was in your heart? Like, what were you inspired, or was there a calling? Were you getting a small voice?
I started reading a lot of like Edgar Cayce and metaphysical stuff back in all that. Because, Star Wars, they talked about the Force. What is the Force? It's like, so all that ideas of, when I was a kid, I studied, I got into doing some meditation and things like that. And I met a few guys. I met the guy who wrote the original Starman script, which was a lot better than the movie that was made, let me tell you.
Okay.
The original script was so good, but Hollywood cuts out all the message, meaning in the film. So when I saw that movie when it came out, I thought, wow, it's, this is going to be great. They're finally getting a film with a great spiritual, universal cosmic story to it. But they cut out all the good parts. I'll tell you some other time what those were. And then I realized Hollywood's not interested in making this kind of stuff. They're just not.
Yeah.
I had ideas to make shows that are about enlightenment and, people waking up. And what's going on, because there was a lot of awakened people who started to see things differently back then, because I grew up in the 60s. Now I was 10 years old in 1966.
Yeah.
So you see all that stuff going on, assassinations, protests, and other stuff.
I've actually
that was my whole focus is, can we do something to shake up the status quo?
Yeah, I've actually pitched shows that were conscious that made that connection. And now after meeting you and talking with you, I realize why I didn't get any further.
Well, the corporations, Seagram's took over Universal in the 1980s. Sony took over Paramount. You name it. All this, all this stuff happened then. But in the 70s, you had the maverick filmmakers. You had Coppola and Scorsese and Spielberg and Lucas and that's what I went out to Hollywood because I wanted to be like them.
Yeah.
I want, everything's independent film now. Great, let's go. And then boom, you got all this corporate takeover, which we're still in today.
Okay.
And and then I started learning from a spiritual master teacher.
Okay, yeah, amazing. So then how did these
people
was
from India?
Oh, amazing. How did these people find you? Or was it synchronicity? Was it like the universe?
Synchronicity.
Bringing together. Okay, let's talk about Joe Dispenza.
I was dating my wife. Yeah. Well, let me get up to the internet age because here's how all that started.
Okay.
Because I learned my girlfriend then, who now I'm married to. So we were going to sweat lodges and doing all sorts of ceremonial things with real Native people. And we learned from this master teacher. He came to India. His name was Vethathiri Maharishi or Swamiji. And he would teach. And there was a lot of celebrities and people from Hollywood there.
Maharishi effect.
Yeah,
I know about that.
The bald actress in the first Star Trek, the motion picture movie, she was there. Just a lot of people who were learning.
I actually interviewed someone who worked with him, was like his right-hand man.
Yeah.
Woman.
So he was able to give Shaktipat, which is basically awakens your Kundalini through his hand and through his eyes. And, your Kundalini wakes up in your body and it's like, what? You feel your life force physically flowing through you. And so the first night that we were out in Palm Desert and near Joshua Tree, I had this experience where he took us out to the edge of the universe and we meditated and outside of in the void, and came back. And that night I just had this spiritual awakening and just everything was very clear to me. And I realized that I can't do this anymore. I can't be out here. It's completely unaligned with where my heart is, where my consciousness is, working this crazy show business thing.
Oh,
And I sold all my stuff, my house, car, you name it, everything. And I left my girlfriend. Luckily, 5 years later, we got back together. But, everyone thought I was nuts. They said, you got a good thing going. I said, no, I can't do it. I just can't do it anymore. It's just completely,
wow.
after I had after the wake-up
Awakening.
call came from
Yeah.
God, it's like, So, what my life was about was not about what I was doing. And so I just went and chilled out for a while, went back to New York, and I decided to move down because my brother was working as an editor for ABC News in Washington. He was cutting Nightline, and he says, well, come down here. There's all sorts of stuff going on, the
Yeah.
government and everything. There's lots of media stuff. And I go, okay, that sounds good. So that's how I started working for Ernst Young, and then I worked for the U.S. State Department, and that lasted until it didn't. And then I said to my wife, what do you want to do? She says, well, we love the desert. She was living in Phoenix. She said, why don't we move out to Phoenix? So we
Okay.
did.
Okay.
And then I found this company because I was looking for stuff. I wrote for Metro, which was Westwood Broadcasting, writing news. And I worked on the day of September 11th. And I knew no plane hit the Pentagon. There wasn't no plane. So I knew something was off there. And I thought, I got to get out of this. This is another thing. God was guiding me. You got to get out of this business because it's like, I don't know what's going on now because now we got fake news. And I knew about fake news back when I was working for the State Department.
Okay.
So then when I got to this company who had this proprietary technology to do streaming on the internet where you could do audio and video, and they hired me like overnight. They came in the
I'm
next
sure they
day.
needed you, right?
And because I brought the idea of really producing something to internet, because there was no internet production. There wasn't even YouTube, wasn't even online yet. There was no
Yeah.
Facebook. None of this stuff existed.
Yeah.
None of it existed. So pretty much I could do whatever I could think of. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what I did. But when you're innovating in the internet back in those days with we called them radio shows, internet radio shows and
Okay.
video. And I'm designing these players that you can launch them, a little icon on your desktop. And it's got 2 channels of video. I can buy the book of John Gray and I can go watch the show. I can shop and check out and do all this other stuff. And it was this really cool player. And I had this music from this Warner Brothers recording artist. They called me one day from Warner Brothers and they said, what are you using this music for? And I said, it's an internet television show. And they said, what? It's a what? That's how early it was.
Yeah.
And we just did this stuff
And they didn't
because we
care,
could.
right?
Yeah,
They didn't
I
care because
launched
it's
this
internet.
TV show. It was
Yeah.
the first of its kind ever. I'll have it on my website in the future.
Yeah.
And people saw it and they couldn't believe it,
Yeah.
because they'd never seen anything like it. And
Yeah.
that in a few months later, I was working with John Demartini and
Uh,
then Joe came in. Well, Joe was in the movie What the Bleep Do We Know?
yeah. Right.
I knew Will and Betsy, who were the producers of that film. Will came and spoke I had a film group in Phoenix, and he came and spoke. Then I met Betsy, and I did an interview with them on my show called Spirit of Film Conversations. And after that, the publicist, Susan Cricken, she called me. She says, can you help Joe? Because she knew what I was doing. Can you help Joe? And I said, well, what does he need? He said, well, he's getting inundated with emails and everything. And so I went and looked at his website and was like, no. And I said, well, so I met him. I was going out to the Conscious Life Expo to promote the Seventh Wave channel, which I launched in May 2006. So Seventh Wave was the first mind, body, spirit radio channel on the internet ever. There was nothing like it before. So the woman who did Celebrate Your Life, Liz Dawn, she had a show. Demartini had a show. John Gray had a show. Joe Dispenza had a show on there. So I had all these great people on there.
Amazing.
And when I created Seventh Wave, I had to create a whole new languaging for it,
Mm,
what to call it. So I call it your online community for positive change. You
mm,
know, I didn't throw out all the metaphysical language, all the new age language. I threw it all out. And I created this own the languaging of the network, about
yeah,
universal consciousness and, spirituality and positivity. And I used
yeah,
to have little ideas that said, be extraordinary, be visionary, be the change, Seventh Wave
yeah.
Network.
You know,
And
it,
that started a whole bunch of people doing shows that were about consciousness subjects.
oh yeah, right. That makes sense. But some of the features and technology that you're talking about, I mean, they have it on websites now, but it's still pretty
Yeah.
innovative where you have a player where you can buy. I mean, that I don't see a lot.
Well,
So
the
what,
monetization of online content didn't really happen until 2016, 2017.
okay, yeah. Yeah.
So the other thing was that I worked in a facility here in town which had a 40 by 40 studio in it with rigging and lighting and electricity and everything.
Uh-huh.
We had a news desk studio, and
Mm-hmm.
then we had a place that people can come in and do audio. We had an audio booth to do all that. So once we started all this and I was working with all these people, we had like Bob Proctor coming in and Marianne Morrissey, all these people who were hot at that time. They were using our studio facilities. And we're doing
Mm-hmm.
TV shows in there and all sorts of things. And people were coming in like, oh yeah, I know who you are, or whatever. Because what happened was, because I had Liz Donners doing Celebrate Your Life, and that's all the Hay House authors, and it was a live event that happened every year. So she did the Wednesday morning 9 a.m. show on Seventh Wave, and she would come in and bring all these people in, all these big authors, and they would say
Mm-hmm.
what we were doing here, and they're going, "Wow, I need that." And what are you doing? And Liz would always point me out. So I
Okay.
started working with all these people, and then so I got Joe, and I redid his website. I met him at the Conscious Life Expo. He didn't have anything. He didn't even know you could charge for video on the internet.
It's
But
still
let me
pretty,
tell you,
it's still
yeah,
pretty unique, Randall,
yeah,
because
this
a
is
lot of
this is
people,
2007,
yeah, I mean, a
you
lot of
know?
people even expect videos to be free now because of YouTube, right?
Well,
And
YouTube at that time was a
ad
bunch of
serve.
cat videos. It was nothing.
Yeah, it was
I
nothing.
wasn't worried about it.
No, I know.
I could and I rewrote Joe's website. He was
Okay.
launching his book, which was Evolve Your Brain. And I interviewed him I have this interview with him. I haven't really, it's not been online for a long time,
Amazing.
where I asked him about what is going on in people's brains when they're watching a movie in a movie theater. So this is stuff I've got. I'm going to be releasing.
Oh my God. So,
Oh yeah.
Randall, that is like gold for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because that's like goes back to your childhood about why you were fascinated and about people's reaction to movies.
Well, think about it. I said on another interview with Jody Kringle, I said, how to get people get used to looking at screens and trusting what they saw on them, a two-dimensional surface. When
Mhm.
and how did that happen? You ever think about that?
Uh,
Because that's the main problem that we
Well,
have today.
would it be when TV came out? That would be when TV came out.
No.
No,
Oh
after that?
no. When people went to see a movie in a movie theater in the screen before 1920, they
Uh-huh.
thought what they were seeing was real.
Okay. Okay.
They
I
couldn't
thought
distinguish
they
film
would.
reality from real reality. That was
Oh,
new to the brain of people.
oh gosh, because I thought they knew it was fake back then.
Yeah.
They just liked it
There's
because
a
it was
scene in
fake
Scor yeah, there's
fantasy.
a scene in Scorsese's movie Hugo where you see this train coming into a station and people jumped out of their seats because they thought a train was going to hit them.
Okay.
And they realized, oh, it's a movie.
Uh-huh.
So it took a while for people's minds to acclimate to the screen reality.
Okay.
They got into the story, they allowed the storytelling experience to happen.
Yeah.
So let me
I wanna,
explain that for you. Let me
yeah.
explain. It's really important and central to what I'm talking about media and consciousness.
Okay.
So, it's like you talk about Zen. What is the sound of a thought, right? That's Zen, right? So this is like a film. So when you go to see a movie in the theater or watch it on television, your mind prepares for the experience. When you're watching something in a theater, in a movie theater, your mind calms down. You're not thinking about what's going on in the outside world, you know, so you could have the experience of viewing a story, with emotion because you connect your emotions into it. So this is an altered state of consciousness that you're in because you're not in the reality that I'm in now when I'm watching a movie. I'm not in the state of consciousness. I'm in the movie consciousness. Think about that. Next time you go to a movie theater, watch how your mind acclimates to what you're seeing and takes it over. It's a
Mm,
very interesting thing when you really break it down.
okay.
So when you see a film, the experience stays with you for about a day or two. The emotional high from it that you receive is still vibrating in the cells of your consciousness, but it's also vibrating in your body.
Hmm.
You know, you may
And I
feel that it's
hear
a
like
mild
horror movies.
excitement, it
Yeah.
resonates in there. You
Hmm.
experience what it felt like when you tell somebody about it. So
Right.
the aspects of the film experience from being in an altered state of consciousness, I tell people, I have trouble meditating. I said, you go watch a film, right? Yeah. Do you have any trouble getting into watching the movie? They say, no, it's easy to watch a movie. I said, meditation's the same way. You just shut off everything and you focus on inward.
Hmm.
Go, oh, okay. So you're already doing it. You just need to, you know, get a new skill. That's it.
Yeah, but this is why it's a little bit disturbing to me about horror movies or scary movies because it can stay in the energetic field of
That's
people.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. You really have to be cognizant of what you're spending your time viewing because it is affecting you.
Hmm.
And this is one of the problems with social media.
Yeah.
I find myself taking the phone and I got caught up in scrolling, go, oh, yeah, I'm in scrolling world. Yeah, put it down.
Oh,
You
I know. I
really
can't
have
even
to
start.
get yourself out of it because
Yeah.
it's become an addiction.
Yeah.
Screen addiction is a real thing.
Yeah.
You
It's
know,
it's real.
it
It's so
stays with us. You can test this out for yourself.
yeah, and
Yeah.
you have the interview with Dr. Joe Dispenza that tells
Well,
you.
that was in 2008. I did. A
Okay.
lot has changed since then,
Well, you
but the
have to have
basic
an
thing is
updated
there.
one.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
basic thing is still there.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is amazing though. I love that you're tying this back to behavior and how it affects you. So would you
Yeah.
share about I want to see the results. So what were the results that you had on like Dr. Joe Dispenza's business? And was he making millions after you changed his
Uh,
website? You know what I mean? I don't know if you have a before and after
well,
or
it certainly started him making money with content, and he learned
okay.
about that because here's a guy who starts to get a lot of interest from a very popular movie, and he's
Yeah.
got all these emails. This is what he told me. He says, "I can't answer all these emails," and I said, "Have you got like an hour a month that you could sit down in front of a camera and answer your emails on camera and just read them and answer them?" He says,
Uh-huh.
"Yeah, I can do that." I said,
Yeah.
okay, well, find a cameraman, shoot yourself against black, just put some lighting on you, and read your emails. You can put a laptop and just do it that way, or paper, whatever you want to do, whatever works for you. So he started doing that. And he says, well, why would I do that? I said, well, you can charge for it. So he charged like, $7.99 to subscribe. And if someone subscribes to it, you'll definitely read their email on your monthly, you know, going through your emails
Oh
every month.
my God, that's brilliant.
And he said, you can charge for that? I said, yeah. I said, we can set it up on your website. It's just a paywall to get to the video and you're good to go. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
I said, but we have a radio show, which is going to attract attention because now you're going to have a radio show on your website. And then he couldn't come up with a title for it. So I'm reading Evolve Your Brain. And on page 57, it says, neurogenesis, blah, 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 blah. I said, so what is this neurogenesis? Is that like central to the whole way the brain works? He said, yeah. I said, well, let's call your show that. He says, okay. So I rewrote everything on his website, redesigned the website, launched his radio show, launched the videos on it. Now he just gave me audio and I cut it for the radio shows. And the video I had a guy do it who's better editor than me at that time. And he cut and he had all his fancy videos and everything. And that's how he started all his media stuff online. He had the subscription video, he had his player that you could open the player up and it's got the radio show and the TV show next to each other. You could watch or listen. So this is 2008. And people were like, whoa. And I have to say,
It's
That's what
still
made him really
impressive.
popular.
No, it's
Yeah, I made a
still
lot of people more
impressive.
famous.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's still impressive because even now, I feel like that kind of monetization people don't think about. And it's just really
Well,
interesting
now you have
because people could do
Patreon,
that
you have
now.
Substack, you have
Patreon.
subscribe and then join on
Yeah,
YouTube. Well, this didn't exist back in 2000, the early 2000s.
right. I
None of this stuff
understand.
existed. So I used to get people say, "How do I make money with a radio show?" And I say, "Sell your books, expand your reputation." And what I did is I took all this interactive media stuff and I created what I call the media strategy, where you connect video content that you're managing, like through a website, through multiple points of presence out on the internet. I gave a talk once where it's like the spokes of a wheel. Here's a
Yeah.
central point where you're controlling all your content and your messaging and your reputation from the central point. And then you have all these points of presence out on the internet. And I called that a media strategy. It's very common today for people to do that. Back when
Yeah.
I did it, nobody knew what I was talking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I want to hear about the time you worked with Eckhart Tolle
Oh
and the
God.
impact it had on your life.
Yeah, well,
I know
one
there's a
day, as I
short
said,
version and there's a long
in the
version.
studio, and everybody's coming in. So this guy comes in. His name is David Ord. He wrote the book Interspiritual Age with Kurt Johnson. And he says, "Where's that guy that's working with Joe and all?" So he points me out. So we were just yakking, and he says, "Do you know who Eckhart Tolle is?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "In the Unity Church, I started the Unity Radio Network, Unity.fm, and I've got Eckhart Tolle. We're doing the Monday class for the Power of Now in a group, and we're having a blast with it." He says, "Great." He says, "You know about his teaching?" I said, "Yeah, yeah, I know all about it. It's terrific. I'm really getting a lot out of it." And he says, "Well, I came here because I'm working with Eckhart. He's going to launch his new book on with Oprah Winfrey, and they're doing a live event in March. And this is like the fall before. This is 2000 and late 2007." And I said, "Oh, who's the platform for that?" And he said, "Move Networks." And I went, "Oh." And he saw me make a face and he said, "Why are you making that face?" And I said, "Well, because their stuff doesn't work. It's not going to work for Oprah. It works, but it doesn't work when you got 750,000 people trying to come through a single pipe to get to the event and then watch it. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
Their system crashes when you get over like 200,000. It's not going to work." And Oprah is like, here it is, and it's not like television. So Hollywood really didn't first, if you people don't remember this, but Hollywood hated the internet at first
Oh,
because
I'm sure.
they
They
couldn't
probably
control
still
it.
do.
They couldn't control it. They couldn't manage it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I interviewed entertainment attorneys from on my show from Hollywood. I think a guy who was Ron Ron Howard's lawyer, entertainment
Hmm.
lawyer, attorney, and we was talking about the changes in the industry in like 2007, what's going on and what Hollywood is thinking
Yeah.
about the internet. What are they going to do with it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Streaming movies, streaming television, it was all just an idea at that time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because I
Cable was the thing.
remember we
Yeah.
watched an internet show in 2013. Now, mind you, it wasn't conscious. I wasn't conscious, but it was produced by Ben Stiller called Burning Love. It was a spoof of The Bachelor, but it was online
Okay.
and it was very well produced. You could tell
Yeah.
millions went into it. It
Yep.
wasn't like a YouTube video at
And
all.
at that time, it cost that much money.
Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. It was funny. So let me finish the story about Tolle. So I told David Ord that, the platform didn't work and was going to crash. And he's like, his face went white. And I said, "Don't worry. Don't worry." He said, "Oprah doesn't know what she's doing. I mean, she's running ads on Seventh Wave for her channels.
Okay.
She stole the idea of Seventh Wave. She called it the Spirit Network that was on satellite radio. I mean, she stole
Okay.
everything from what I was doing because she didn't know what to do. She's just, these guys have got all the guys on it now. They're whatever. I mean, when I started Seventh Wave, 4 months later, you had Hay House Radio. And I knew Summer McStravick, who was the director of that.
Yeah.
I talked to her before. Like, it's just,
Okay.
you
You're
see
used
things
to
happen, you start
people
the ball rolling, right? You start the
stealing your
ball rolling.
ideas. It's a
More power to
compliment.
them. Great. Keep going. Keep
Yeah,
going. Keep
it's a
doing
compliment.
stuff.
Right.
Yeah, there's
That's
room for
nice.
everybody. Yeah.
Okay.
So I set up an event for Tolle the same week that he was going to be on with Oprah. And it was a live event. and we rented a theater in San Rafael, California. I hired John Street to shoot it, who was shooting all the Dr. John Gray stuff for me. He brought in a crew, 3 camera shoot, 9 hours of video. We had about, and people could register for the event before, and this was in, early 2008. So they registered for the event, which was $39.95. Yeah. And then we had about 2,200 people watch it live. And then we had the aftermarket up there. We cut up the audio and the video into segments. And that aftermarket page that was on from EckhartTolle.com, that stayed up for about 18 months. Sounds True put up the money for the event, about $18,000. And then we made about $500,000, all said and done, after about 18 months.
Amazing.
The Oprah event technically was a disaster. She even had her apology on her website for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So after that fiasco, where nobody could watch the damn thing, not even live, it was horrible. David Ward said, "I'm glad we did the thing with you because that's how we launched his new Earth book." And I said, "Yeah, well, there you go." Because
Yeah,
people could buy the event and then buy the book and then buy his other book and check out in all one cart, boom, like that. And that was new at that time. I was all custom built, front end, back end coding, the whole 9 yards, shopping cart integration, all of it. That's why it costs so much money.
It's still impressive because you don't see a lot of that still, even today. No, that's what I'm saying. This is very cutting edge even today.
Yeah, where you could do that. I don't see anybody building or doing anything like that except through their websites and stuff like that, but through a branded environment. So a few weeks later, after the thing with Oprah happened, it was just like, his technical guy calls me up. He said, "Well, what do we do next?" I said, "Well, you don't trust Hollywood to do anything for you because they don't know jack. And you put everything on EckhartTolle.com. You start Eckhart Tolle TV. And if you go to his website today and you go to Joe Dispenza's website, what do you see? Joe Dispenza TV, Eckhart Tolle TV.
Okay.
That came from me.
That's your, oh my gosh.
I'm going to take credit where credit is due. I don't care at this point. I did this stuff. And these guys may deny it, but I'm telling you, I have proof. I can show you the pictures. I took snapshots of everything.
Yeah, but why would they deny it? It's like, it doesn't matter. It's a collaboration.
That's showbiz, dear. That's showbiz.
Okay,
I thought of everything. That's the ego of people in showbiz.
Okay. Well, I just
they don't credit their team.
Okay.
Everything happens in show business. You have a team. Anybody you see doing a show, well, recently you can get away with it, but 10 years ago, 15 years ago, you need a crew to shoot, 2 camera shoot, like Maria Forleo, I knew her camera guy. I said, "How's it going?" He said, I said, "What are they paying you?" And he told me. I went, "That's nice."
Yeah.
That's it. Production value costs money. This is one of the things where I always used to tell people, if you're going to put something up, it's got to look good and you have to look good.
Yeah.
So I would tell the men, you know what? Get a new haircut, go out and get a nice suit, create a style, branding, colors. I used to have branding people come in and work with them sometimes.
Yeah.
That
you had the whole experience.
You have to have a color palette for your branding. I mean, all those things were new back in the day.
Yeah, but still, even today, Randall, people aren't integrating all of that, like what you're talking about, a media strategy and branding.
Hire me as the consultant.
Yeah, exactly. Well, why is it important for people to use ideas, images, and stories that uplift humanity?
All right. Now we're going to shift the conversation. You've heard enough about what I did before. This is a really important part about what I'm about now. So the 20th century was a century that we moved from newspapers, photography, movies, television, connected communication. What that whole spectrum of media did was to create a control system, a constantly operating system to fool us into the illusion of thinking things were a certain way when they actually weren't. This is the issue today. And people don't realize this is what's going on. You got to really be observant. And this is the reason why I'm doing my show, because a lot of people don't realize that this is happening. They just think media is media and whatever. They're living in the past in terms of what's happening with this system. So this all ended in 2020. Everything started coming online. Okay. So what this situation did with all this companies, studios controlled it, corporations control the media. You have broadcast TV. It's all controlled, all managed. The messaging is all managed. Only recently, in the past several years, have people really started to discover independent media and the power of independent media. That just recently happened because we were forced to go in our homes and go inward and look at ourselves and look at what was going on and stopped all the stress and driving to work and, the 9 to 5 mentality. We got away from that. Now people are working at home and they can have a think part of the day. Their brain functions. They're not rushing all the time. So this whole thing that happened to us in the 20th century, it took us away from looking at the world through keen and strict observation, sensitivity, feeling, relationship with the world, to a reality of right and wrong, dualistic, confrontational points of view, convoluted morality, rewriting history to support the narrative of the control system, and endless entertainment to keep the mass public consciousness in fear and mindless distraction from the truth of who we really are as human beings. I said that. I just read that off my screen. That didn't come off the top of my head. This is in my book, folks. So if you want to realize these things are going on, this happens so much that today we have to manage our energy, raise our awareness to a higher level just to survive every day, to keep our sanity on a minute-to-minute basis. And when you think about what I just said, you're realizing this is what we have to do now. So our focus is becoming a lot more inward. And one of the things that people have to realize that now is we have to reestablish our connection with our higher selves and our creativity. And this is what my message where it's ultimately going. You want to know a really good book to read, I'll tell you. It's a book called The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. The Creative Act by Rick Rubin. He's a music producer. He works with a lot of very famous people in the music industry. And he wrote this wonderful book. It's very short. I read it before I go to bed. I reread it and reread it, because I'm programming my sleep, my consciousness with thinking about creativity and awareness and being observant and watch people. I'm a great fan of having a conversation with people I don't know to get their story, because I'm a writer. I want to hear characters and ideas and things. I've learned so much from just conversations with people that people are not talking to each other. That's why, going out and putting your phone down, families, the kids at the table scrolling through the thing, and the father's trying to have a conversation like, what did you do in school today? It's like, put the phone down. So this has become a problem in families, and families are now starting to really realize this. And I can tell you, schools are not allowing kids to have cell phones in school.
Yeah. Okay, but we're getting away from the question.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a whole problem, you're right, of just media, too much media in general. But I'm talking about the importance of stories that uplift us.
Well, the stories that uplift us are really important. First of all, the stories that we're telling about ourselves to ourselves.
Okay.
That's the most important story, And the other thing is that if people once they get that settled in themselves, then a lot of people find themselves not satisfied with what they see happening around them, and they start to fight against it, and they're fighting the system. And in a way, that's good to speak up and say something about it. But at the same time, if you think of a quote that Socrates said, that, trying to change the past by fighting the past doesn't work. It's better to create the future. You're better off creating the future than trying to fight the past. You've got to rethink and reframe things. So what are the guys who wrote the Declaration of Independence? What did they say is, well, we're not going to listen to you anymore. We're going to start our own thing, and we're going to call it this, and we're going to start our own nation called this. And we're declaring that. So they took a stand, and they knew that they'd probably all be killed for it when they did it. So that's a commitment to not just fighting the past, but creating something that is better than the situation that you're living in, and doing something with it that you can stand behind. So this is the thing that people are discovering now. But as people began to discover this new kind of resurgence of independent media online, and people started to talk about things, and they're just discovering from doing searches, they're awakening. But then what happens next? They throw AI at us.
what you're getting at is kind of like use your own creative gifts, share your gifts. You don't
Yeah.
have to watch these different programs. You can look
Yeah.
for uplifting content that's available. I know there's Illuminate Film Festival, there is Gaia, there's Humanities Team. They all have, you know, uh, conscious media that can really expand your mind and help you come up with your own ideas to share with the world. So,
Yeah.
what is Zen success to you?
Well, Zen success is really, I think it's kind of the way I've looked at how I relate to my own career, because I'm just me. I'm just, Randall. I'm a father, I have a family and whatever, but then there's this producer guy. That's my digital personality and my professional personality. So to me, it's kind of zen just to think about that. Because when you meet someone, it's like, what do you do? What do you do? And I said, I never answer that question directly for people because I never tell them at first. I say, well, I do a lot of things. What do you like?
You threw it back to
I never
them.
know where to go with that. I want to get to know them, and throwing me a question of what do you do professionally, they don't care. They want to know who you are. So I ask them a question about themselves and something that they like, and we start talking about that. And then I'll say, what do you think
Amazing.
about this? What do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And it's like, then we get into an interesting conversation. Then it's fun rather than me saying, well, I did this and whatever. I just did that. That's the past. What I'm working on now and what I'm doing with where I'm going in my next project and other things, that's the most interesting thing to me. What I'm creating next. What I did before is, your reputation. Yeah, so what? What you're creating now is the most important thing, and who you're becoming, and how is that changing you?
I love
That
that
for me,
definition.
that for
Yeah.
me is the most important thing is what am I doing now that's having an effect on my life and challenging me? And it's like, can I, I've done a lot of challenging things before, but I didn't know they were challenging at the time. I'm like Indiana Jones. What are you gonna do? How are you gonna get the ark back? I don't know. I'm just making it up as I go. And that's
Yeah.
kind of how it feels when you're doing it. I'm just, well, let's do this now, and I can do that. But when you look back on it, you go, wow, that was pretty innovative.
Yeah.
A lot of people copied it. Okay.
Yeah.
But what does that get
Amazing.
you? That gets you what, 2 cents? And, doesn't get you anything. Somebody call me to do I turn down a lot of people who want me to come and speak. But it's like,
Okay.
what's your whole event about? And they tell me, and I went, no, no, it's
So
not
I
my
guess I need to feel honored that you came on the Zen Success Show then.
Well, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay.
I know the Humanities Team platform. I've known
Yeah.
about it for years, and a
Yeah. I
lot of
work with,
people that
yeah.
are out there, they saw
Yep.
things that I did long ago, and and
Yeah.
uh, and it inspired them, and that's what's meaningful to me. When I hear back from people, I hear from my whole hosts send me an email once in a while, and they say, just thanking me or whatever, and they say, yeah, I remember you telling me about this years ago, and I go, yep. So
Well,
I get
Randall.
emails from people which are really sweet and it's fun. But you know
Yeah.
what? I'm glad to see everybody out there making a difference and making an impact and starting to change the way that people think and all that with media because that's all we have now.
It's been such a pleasure getting to know you, hearing about your journey in media and your upcoming book, Media Expanded. And I'll put your website, how to see your videos, and Facebook in the show notes.
Yeah, look for me on Substack. That's where I'm going to be. I'm going to
Okay.
be writing and posting on there. So if you want more and learn more of what I'm talking about, all these subjects, and I consider myself more of a media historian now more than anything.
Hmm.
Because I'm saying, how does the past of what happened in the media, how did we get here and where is it going? And I really want to speak to the creators and the filmmakers and the influencer people that are creating content for the future. Because when you look at our world today and you see what's going on, and that's something you might say on that video or that podcast might make a difference in someone's life, um, that's a responsibility, and that's got great, it's like Spider-Man. You have a responsibility when you create something to make it great. And if you want to go out and make stupid horror movies, then you're only making your life worse. But if you want to make out something that's challenging people and helping them to think and helping them to see themselves in the world differently and supporting their lives and their lifestyle, that's really where it's at in my book.
Well, thanks for being on my show today, Randall. Have a blessed day.
Thanks for inviting me.
That's it for today's episode of Zen Success. Head on over to iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you listen to shows. Subscribe to the show and share with friends. Be sure to head on over to ZenSuccessShow.com to help you on your Zen success journey. And join us on the next episode. May you find your own Zen success in life.